Greetings to all true boxing fans. Last night in America, in New York, the rising American technician Richardson Hitchins completely dominated George Kambosos and even knocked him out in the 8th round. Guys, we're going to break down this fight from a technical perspective right now. Among other things, there was a very interesting knockout mechanic there. At first glance, it looked like just a shot to the liver. Or somewhere around there, a left hook to the body. But why did he land that particular punch? There was a specific setup for the knockout. We'll talk about all of that, but this video is part of the Fighter Portrait series, and we're going to focus specifically on Richardson Hitchins. Sometimes I mix up the endings when I say his name. We're going to break down the American fighter in particular, because he's 27 years old, already an IBF world champion, and this was his title defense at 63.5 kilograms in the super lightweight division. And from my point of view, Richardson Hitchins is a true technician. In other words, he's an athlete from the American boxing school who you can really call a classic technician. But being a technician doesn't mean he's unbeatable. It doesn't mean he's the best. In fact, he has some clear weaknesses. But Richardson Hitchins is exactly a technical boxer. What does that mean? We'll break it down in this video and also analyze the Americans' future prospects, because this weight class is extremely competitive. Now, as for Kambosos, by the way, we discussed this upcoming fight in our private channel. Kambosos is a boxer who drew the lucky ticket. He pulled off an upset against Teofimo Lopez. Why? Everyone wonders, how? I mean, Kambosos, he boxes so poorly. Today, he was completely dominated. You see, styles make fights. Kambosos is a real tough guy. Into a fire fight with his opponent. He's 32 years old now, and he's kind of angular. By the way, he's from Australia, but he's Greek, a descendant of Spartans, I think. That's what he says. I think it's true, because he has a real fighting spirit. And as for pure boxing skills, Kambosos is, well, a bit undertrained, let's put it that way, but he's tough as a rock, literally like a stone. Right? I mean that literally, including his durability. Notice how tense he is. In boxing, it's usually good to drop your shoulders and keep them relaxed, but he actually raises his. He's all stiff and tense. He's got a really tough head, meaning he can take his opponent's punches well. Basically, he's ready to fight to the last drop of blood. Boxing hockey is a real problem, 5 words with S. And he does have a problem. Well, aside from his overall technical level, Kambosos is, well, kind of awkward. But this is a boxer who only performs well as the second number, as a counterpuncher. Well, the question is, against whom, right? And when Teofimo went after him, after Kambosos, Kambosos met him hard. He stood his ground. Lopez hits him, and Kambosos hits back even harder. And now Chris Mannix has an unofficial chance. 4 points ahead. It worked. So, he was like a rock, and Lopez was like a scythe. Lopez thought he'd cut him down like a bush, but Kambosos just, bam, stood his ground. It's like that saying, the scythe met the stone, right? Lopez himself, well, he basically did everything possible to lose that fight. But, accordingly, that kind of fight doesn't work with Richardson Hitchins, because, Kambosos has already had 3 fights against distance fighters. That's 2 fights against Devin Haney and 1 fight against Vasily Lomachenko. So, trying to fight as the counterpuncher, digging in, trying to meet hard and respond against a distance fighter, that idea is doomed from the start. So if you box the way you usually do, you have 0 chance. Just 0. What? Kambosos, he's got a smart new coach now. And there were some theories that maybe Kambosos would do some work on his mistakes and box differently, not like he did against Lomachenko or Haney, but actually push forward. So basically, for now, he might change up his boxing style. On one hand, that's really hard because the athlete is already fully formed, you know, and it's one thing to understand everything in your head, but it's another thing to actually learn it, and you already have a natural tendency, meaning you're used to fighting as the second number. It's tough to switch to being the lead fighter and move forward. But hypothetically, it was possible, right? And that's where some of the intrigue of the fight came from. Now, let's look at what we actually saw in reality. In reality, Kambosos didn't change his style at all, although he did make attempts. He tried to do it at the start of every round. This is going to be a very important point that will go down in history. So, in the first round, the second round, the third round, right at the beginning of each round, during the first minute, he tried to move forward. He would come forward with a double jab, try to slip under punches. In general, crouch down, sneak in, but his energy only lasted for about a minute. After that, Richardson Hitchins would just start picking him apart. He was peppering him with straight punches. Subtitles by Diameter. He used the jab. He hit him every which way. And, in the 8th round, well, there was a knockout. But even before that, maybe starting from the 6th or 7th round, the whole flow of the fight changed. So, guys, now we're going to move on to the American. That's actually going to be the most interesting part, the breakdown of Hitchins. But for now, we're just talking about the fight itself, okay? And basically, if at the beginning Hitchins was running away and picking his shots from a distance, like Devin Haney, then a couple of rounds before the knockout, Hitchins started moving forward, and he was doing both things at once. On one hand, he was creeping in with his footwork. The American was pressing forward, but on the other hand, in dangerous moments, he would lean back himself. As we take a look at the suspension scorecard. So, he moves his legs underneath himself, while leaning his upper body back. Well, he uses what works for him, what feels comfortable. Sometimes he defends with his forearm, sometimes he knocks away with his shoulder, and sometimes he just leans back, right? And he started aiming his shots. He began picking his targets, working different levels, really taking control, acting confidently, and loosening up. And it became clear that an early finish was, in fact, just around the corner. But actually, it happened even faster than I expected. I thought there would be a cumulative effect, but it turned out there was no need for that. What? What was the mechanism of the knockout? It was a reverse 1-2, meaning a right straight followed by a left hook to the body. Somewhere around the liver area, I think, right? Liver, solar plexus, basically a left to the body. And one question arises, why did he get there? Was it just a coincidence or not? No, it wasn't a coincidence. Take a close look, the 8th round. Before that, there were at least 2 reverse 1-2s, right straight, left hook. The fight, and he hides behind it, to be continued. This is a really, powerful combination. So, right straight, left hook, both punches are heavy. And Kambosos, he was taking that left hook. So, he takes it, 1-2, the left hook, again 1-2. And by then, your defense kind of adjusts, so you raise your hands. And that's why, when there was another right straight, and he thought there would be another left hook, he raised his hands. Or maybe he didn't even raise them. But anyway, he was getting ready for the hook, for the left hook, to defend against it. But there was, basically, a change in levels. So he was expecting a shot to the head, but it turned out to be to the body. Basically, the point is that Richardson Hitchins set him up, technically speaking. So it wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate technical move. He threw a right, a left to the head, a right, a left to the head, and then a right, and then dropped down a level with a left to the body. It worked. He took the punch. You can use this technique yourself and do the same thing. It really works. So everything is clear here. Kambosos was dominated. Before the fight, there were at least some small, theoretical chances for an upset if Kambosos could really adapt and change his boxing style. It seemed to me that he even tried. But he's already an experienced athlete, and everyone has their own tendencies. Basically, he spent his whole life fighting as the second number. In short, he waits, or sometimes leads, but only against a stationary opponent. Basically, he doesn't know how to box against mobile fighters. And to learn that in a year or a year and a half, it's theoretically possible, right? People are different. For example, I know of some con artist, actually, who's pretty famous. He even has a Wikipedia article about him. He's, a genius. I don't know, he ended up on a ship somehow. He says, I'm some kind of doctor, forges documents. And then someone has appendicitis or something like that. They tell him, you're a doctor, a surgeon, so go ahead and treat him. He opened a manual, read it, and cured the guy. He actually performed the surgery. He's a genius. There are people like that, but usually, for a normal person, it turns out to be hard to just suddenly retrain for something new like that. Now, actually, I wanted to talk about the fight itself much more briefly. Now I want to break down Richardson Hitchins, why he's a technical fighter, and what lies ahead for him. Let's take another look. He's 27 years old, and he's the IBF champion. This is his second title defense. And he's a pretty tall, lean guy. I'm glancing at my laptop here. I've got the stats. So he's 1.78 meters tall. Well, that's a tall guy. For example, Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney are both about 1.73 meters. So he's 5 centimeters taller. In other words, he's tall and skinny. He also has very long arms. He's got a good reach, 1.88 meters. His reach, as they call it, is really impressive, 1.88 meters, especially for this weight class. Now, why is Hitchins considered a technical fighter? Look, he's a classic distance fighter. And as strange as it may sound, he doesn't have any extraordinary natural talents. I mean, sure, he does have some talent. Yeah, he's got long arms, he's long-armed, and, well, he's not even particularly fast, just relatively quick. A relatively quick, long-armed guy. Some people call fighters technical if they do some special tricks or flashy moves, something super fancy. From my point of view, a technical fighter is simply someone who uses classic boxing technique in the highest quality way possible. So, being a technical fighter is largely about the quality of technique execution. And Richardson Hitchins is extremely good at that. This boxer actually reminds me of Tony Harrison. Tony Harrison at 69 kilograms. The guy who gave Jermel Charlo a real beating twice. Oh wait, in the second fight, he was actually knocked out by Charlo, but he was winning on points there too. How does he manage to do that, and why did he end up losing? And then he went to fight Tim Tszyu and lost as well. He's also a classic technician. In other words, he's a boxer who doesn't have that natural explosiveness or swagger. He's just well-trained. He's focused, precise, and does his job. His jab, his hands and feet are all connected in that jab, so he doesn't hit with explosiveness, but rather, he relies on technique. He throws a straight right, but there's no real explosiveness or power. It's just that he turns his shoulders, and he acts methodically. He throws 1-2s, he catches his opponent with a punch. Like that knockout against Kambosos, for example. He kept throwing right-left to the head, right-left, got his opponent used to it, then switched to right-left to the body, and that's when the other guy got caught. He boxes strictly by the textbook, classic boxing style. So, he really relies on technique, right? Basically, he lacks physicality. And physicality. Physicality doesn't just mean having big muscles. Actually, he has a normal boxer's build, narrow waist, somewhat broad shoulders, long arms. But you see, stars like that, usually, they don't rely on technique. They're driven by their personality and, by the way, by their physicality too. Take Devin Haney, for example. But he's already been cut up, right? He's been knocked out, maybe even beaten up in sparring, and started to feel insecure. Same goes for Ryan Garcia, same for Teofimo Lopez. Technically, they're all decent boxers. Each of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. That is, let's say there's Ryan Garcia. He doesn't have a direct right. Well, his body doesn't obey in this strike. He doesn't have the right technique for that punch. Right. Now Lopez, he's a real standout. He's actually a very interesting boxer, by the way. He's my favorite, and not just as a boxer. I really like him as a person, too. But when he throws a right, he doesn't rotate his shoulder line past halfway. Well, everyone has their own thing, but they're just bursting with energy. I mean, they're champ. Just look at their faces. They're literally glowing, like they know how cool they are. Like, I'm the champion. I don't want to make faces or exaggerate, but they're just overflowing with it. So what are they? They're basically just stars, you know? And Richard Hitchins, he's just an ordinary guy. Even his face has a kind of modest expression. He was interviewed. He doesn't show off or get all fired up. He just doesn't have that, you know, that champion's drive and physicality. So he's a boxer who relies on technique. Now, where will he arrive? This is a really interesting point. Hitchins is already a world champion. Also, notice that there are strong boxers he's beaten easily. And now I want to see who those are. That's Liam Paro, of course. The snowman, Sergey. The kitchen. The last one. The last time I did this, I did a lot of different things. And this is Jose Pedro. So these are real top-level guys, and Hitchins dominated them. On points, yes, on points, using his technique. But there was a fight against Gustavo Daniel Lemos.
The Argentine.
And the fight went really badly.
Great round for Limbo. Let's see if he can pull it off. And Hitchins is in the fight.
Why? Because Hitchins doesn't like people who come at him aggressively. So even if Hitchins' opponent is tough, maybe even a knockout artist, it doesn't matter who, but if he boxes from a distance, like Kambosos does, not pressing forward, it's a comfortable pace for him. Thanks to his technique, he stays calm, adapts, and gets better with each round, because he needs to build up his confidence. In other words, Hitchins can't start off strong right away. He needs to win a round, 2, maybe 3. Then he loosened up, became more flexible, and began to box better. That's how it is. And everything goes well, basically. And he beats them. But if someone charges at him, like Gustavo Lemos did, this is a boxer who's pretty average in terms of skill, just a regular fighter, not a top guy. And right away, Hitchins got lost. So he gets thrown off under pressure. And that brings us to the point that yes, he has technique. Yes, he uses it. But on the downside, he lacks confidence, and under pressure, he can break. So he's really on the edge. In fact, against this Lemos guy, I think he even got some help from the judges. So I'll let some things up. Richardson Hitchins is a true technician, but a technician is just that, a technician. In other words, he's someone who moves in boxing, basically, thanks to his technique. In short, he wins because of his technical skills. But this is not a biorobot. Yes, AAA, unlike some of the stars around, who are simply physically capable, they have more physical energy, talent, speed, explosion, the same courage, confidence, self-assurance, right? Drive. And he kind of doesn't have any of that, but he's still moving forward. He's already become a champ, like Tony Harrison, right? That is, by the way, I don't remember whether I became a champion or not. I think he didn't. But anyway, he's a good-looking guy too. Yeah, but it's like he's running on technique. And if only he had a bit more confidence. That confidence, you know, he'll get it. Like that. What's his name? Duncan MacLeod, the Highlander, basically. Every win will add to his confidence. So, theoretically, if he gets through a couple more of those kinds of volumes, half volumes, if he gets through them without losing, then he'll become even more dangerous. Because, you see, he'll become more confident. Those are just some of my thoughts. Guys, thanks for watching this video. Also, in my private Telegram channel, I post my fight predictions, and they're doing pretty well. So yeah, that's about it. Subscribe. A monthly subscription there costs about as much as a cup of coffee. I'll leave the link. Wishing everyone the best. It works with cards worldwide. America, Russia, Europe, every country. All the best to everyone. See you next time. Turning off the camera.